right? Rhino, like we know Rhino, was in existence since 2017. We started welcoming investors on, I believe, 2018, and that was the 10 original investors. Back in 2020, we opened it up to a more global audience and did one round. Everyone remembers it was just that 1 week, and we welcomed on 45 additional investors. So we have a total of 55 investors. Now this week, so every single month, every investor gets a monthly commentary, which is kind of like my most, I don't want to say most fun, but my most pleasurable moment. Because in that moment, I take the entire day and I take a look at everything that we've been doing, every one of our goals going forward, and where exactly are we in terms of what we're envisioning and what we're accomplishing, what we're executing. And every single month, I always start the commentary with the same sentence. It's my absolute pleasure to share with you how we're doing, because it really is my absolute pleasure. Now, as you go back in time, and if you read the commentary, you'll understand, or at least you'll get a certain sense of, wow, this company had started here, and this was its thoughts and vision, and then COVID happened, and this happened, and that happened. And a little bit invisible between the lines, you could kind of get a sense of, at least in your own ecosystem or your own take a look around, every company had the opportunity to go bankrupt. Every company had a built-in excuse. COVID shut the economy down. And I believe like 70% of small businesses went under. And the other 30% were small businesses that had been around for quite some time, right? So we kind of went ahead and fit into that like 1% of companies that just started off, had their complete business plan thrown out the window and had to make do, had to find a way to adapt and evolve. And we are privileged, and it's our pleasure to share that we had always done that. And it's always been, and it's also been with the help of many of those that are on this call right now. In fact, many remember Hipsuasion and Rhino Premier and Rhino Concierge and Rhino Traffic and Rhino Digital. In fact, who remembers Rhino Digital, where I sat in this office 1 hour every single day for 9 months straight and went ahead and taught more and more about internet marketing and a zero to hero approach, where the first week was mindset and then this and then that, then learning it, then understanding it, and it was fun. And what did we do? I think we charged $37 a month, right? And people would say, Anthony, it's like a really absurdly low amount. You're dedicating what, 30 hours a month to it, plus you're having to put the curriculums together, because anyone would remember it wasn't Anthony that came out here and said, hey, and then today we're going to talk about this. It was all very structured curriculum. And I always said from day one, it is not the product, it's the person. And if I believe that about others, I want them to go ahead and experience that about me. Hey, that's Anthony. He could have done this, but he didn't. And in fact, anyone that ever emailed me and said, hey, Anthony, I'm having a problem with this, or my payment, or my funds, I always said the same thing. Please don't tell anyone, but we're going to cancel all your reoccurrings. We're just happy that you're with us. And in fact, to our credit, there were people that months later emailed us and said, hey, my financial situation now picks back up. I'd like to go ahead and re-participate and be able to go ahead and support and offer money. They voluntarily said they wanted to pay, even though that they never had to. And it was always a credit to what we were doing. And more, I got to meet everyone. And when you touch lives in that type of way, right? With Rhino Digital talking about internet marketing, but Rhino Premier talking about stock market investing, and Hipsuasion talking about behavioral science, and Rhino Concierge talking to everyone on the front lines. Remember, Rhino Concierge was a free service. That didn't mean that it was free for us. We had to go ahead and hire a concierge team. That concierge team took every single call, did every single outreach, did the emails back and forth. And it wasn't that anything was ever free, right? Like we could kind of throw that word away. Nothing is ever free, but they were not income generating. The belief always was that Rhino's vision was so much larger, so much down the road, that if the ecosystem that Rhino is building can see Rhino for, whoa, I know who these people are. In fact, every one of my concerns, every one of my emails, I have Anthony's cell phone. I always knew where I stood with Rhino and with Anthony. And ever since, it's always been getting larger and larger, to the point that he went ahead and made sure that no matter what, we always understood where we were, and we always got to see the vision going forward. And that was always the goal that Rhino had, because we believed at some point we were going to develop something quite large. And in the not secrecy, but in the back room of our, in the laboratory, so to speak, we were building it without ever knowing it, right? Like I almost said secrecy, but it wasn't that Rhino kept the secret from you. It was Rhino who kept the secret from itself, unbeknownst. It's almost like, what's the saying? Luck is the good fortune of work ethic and timing, right? When someone says, oh, you're lucky, it's not like anyone ever, okay, let's say you walked in the road and you picked up $100 bill. My golly gee, you're so lucky. But are you? You had to walk in the road. Where were you walking, right? Were you walking to your job? Were you walking to get exercise? And if you were getting exercise, do you keep that exercise so that you could be that you could be sharp and witty and be a high-performing person, a valuable asset to society? All of which, one would say you were lucky for walking in the road, but the road was, you walking in the road was not the cause, it was the effect of you doing something, right? And that's what Rhino always put themselves in. In fact, my father, for all of his flaws, was always the hardest working person I ever met. And I remember going to work with him, and he would say to me, and I would say to him actually, "Oh, Dad, you worked really hard today. Like, how much did you make?" Because as a child, you wanted, like, you were influenced by stuff like that. Oh, this was $1 million, right? Or this was that, and the big numbers excited you. You go to the restaurant and you would look at the menu and you would look at the most expensive thing and then read the description. Like, oh, this caught my attention. My father would always say, "I have no idea how much I made," and that kind of, it took me back. How do you work so hard and you have no idea what you made? And it took me a while to really understand what his words were. If you work your hardest, the money just comes. You never have to worry about money. And it's interesting because those that have lives that they find exciting, like when you walk in the road or when you meet friends and they're happy. They never are worried about something, or they're never worried about money. You're able to go ahead and identify them as, you could almost take society and put them in two separate buckets. Those that worry about money and those that don't worry about money. Those that worry about money and those that worry about performance, right? Because those that worry about performance know that performance equals the money. Those that worry about money have to backtrack into what they need to do to get the money, which is another concern. And when you have all those concerns, how can you ever apply yourself fully to the job, right? Like if I was running Rhino and my only goal was money, how am I going to get money? Well, then I'm really, really bad at this, right? Because I've given everything away for free for God knows how long. In fact, some of the investors that are on this call right now have said to me, "Anthony, you're just giving stuff away for free. That's not exactly a good business." We had one investor, she was fantastic. She was 22, got in at the right time, made some money, cashed out because she was going to study abroad in France. And she goes, "Ant, I don't know how you do it. I kind of think you're the worst business person ever because you've given everything away, but yet you've always been profitable. I don't know how that's possible." And I said, "Well, when you go to business school, maybe you'll learn," right? So long story short, in being a conduit of everything going on, being a conduit of speaking to every walk of life on the front lines, being a conduit of creating a department that actually proactively reached out to everyone, being a conduit of being able to speak to people on their financial goals through stock market analysis, being a conduit of being able to speak to people on education of computers, right? In 2020, internet marketing, what is this thing? I better learn it. We did a 9-month curriculum to be the conduit of speaking to everyone at that point, to be the conduit of speaking to everyone in persuasion, where you talked about behavioral science and how if you say fried shrimp, people weren't apt to order it. But if you said shrimp tempura, everyone wanted it. But it was the same thing. It was wording. It was what was allowable, what was perceivable, what did society allow, right? Like, where did you turn the cheek? To be a conduit of all that and then add it to the life that I lived and add it to the vision of going forward has went ahead and created where we are right now. And that's Rhino Street. Now, behind you, I have a board. Well, I have many boards, right? But I went ahead and wrote down a couple of things on the board this morning because the biggest challenge for me throughout Rhino Street was, how do I go ahead and create just just like a messaging, like how do I make it to make sense? Because the problem, or at least the challenge of being me, and that's not me as in Anthony, but me as in the person with the vision that's that's inventing the product, right? Is that to quote Elon Musk, I know every component of every car, right? There is not a single thing anyone could ever ask me of Rhino Street that I don't know the answer to. I know every component of every car. And the challenge with that is when you ask me a question, well, Ant, how did you come up with the steering wheel? My answer is going to be something that has a genesis of like being 5 years old and seeing a wheel go around going down the hill, or being in a classroom with a 7-year-old that went ahead and held this wheel better. Because every single component of everything we do has a genesis that has led it so far to being perfectly equipped for what it is. Now, the difficulty is when you hear someone speak the way I'm speaking, it's only one of two things. It's either that person's insane and they're going to fail, which is 99.9% of the people that you hear speaking the way I'm speaking, or that's the 1% of person that is going to invent the future. And the difficulty with that is, if I were to ask you, if the founder of Google came to you when Google wasn't Google, but it was like they were two kids in Stanford and they said they were coming up with the search engine algorithm and said, hey, listen, we just kind of need $1,000 to go ahead and buy our next server. If you give us $1,000, we'll go ahead and give you 5% of the company. Would you say yes? And many people always say, of course I would say yes. It's Google. I can get 5% of Google for $1,000. Duh. But that person is lying to themselves. And it's not to call that person a liar. It's to go ahead and observe that the variables that person is using to answer that question are all erroneous. They have the benefit of hindsight, right? So let's go ahead and actually take a look at it. If two college kids that were about to drop out of school because they were creating this search engine algorithm during a time of S.com and something Vista.com and Yahoo search, and even when search wasn't actually a thing, like no one really prioritized search, and said, we have the algorithm that's going to change the future of search. And if you give us $1,000, we're going to give you 5% of the company. And in 20 years from now, that company's going to be worth over $1 trillion. Your $1,000 investment is going to equal something like $50 billion or whatever that math comes out to. I don't think you would say yes, because you would say, okay, first of all, you two are about to first of all, you're both from Russia, right? Like you're not even like Sergey and like first of all, I don't even really know you, but you're in Stanford, so that's kind of cool. You're coming in with this thing that's going to solve a problem that nobody even knows is a problem. Everyone's happy with the way things are. And you two, on top of all of that, are going to be the ones that are uniquely qualified to do this. And on top of that, you're going to be the largest company, the top 3 largest companies in the entire world 20 years from now, when you're going to buy this thing called YouTube that doesn't even exist yet, so I don't even know what it is. Gmail, which never existed, so I don't know what it is. You're going to do all of that. And you're going to have search and maps, and none of it even existed. You had to actually look at the person and say, this is the type of person that could come up and invent the stuff that I can't even think of. I don't know. Would you? Maybe you would. Maybe you wouldn't. I happen to think many people would. Oh, hey, Frida. No, please. We're going to, as always, these calls are recorded and we're going to send out the replay. So thank you for joining. So I'm not sure that you would. And the difficulty with that is there are those that would, right? Like Google did get money. Google could never have been Google without getting money. Google had to go ahead and buy so many servers and computers, like they had to do so much. Google is not Google because of the idea of Google. Google is Google because the idea plus financial resources, right? Like we need to make sure that we understand that. Facebook is not Facebook because the idea of Facebook. Facebook is Facebook because the idea of Facebook plus the financial resources that invested to allow it to grow. Any company in the history of the world that has a visionary founder is only what you know of today because they were able to speak and share with others at opportune times and be able to share in such a way that people understood and said, oh, I see. And those people never, ever had to worry about money ever again for the rest of their life, because they said when that was a moment, when that opportunity came, I was able to just see it. And that's what we believe is Rhino Street, right? So what is Rhino Street? So let's take a step back. And because I have it on the board behind me, I'm actually able to kind of explain it, hopefully kind of quickly. It's 10:21 now. I'm hoping to finish explaining it by 10:30. And that's, for those that know me, that's really quite a challenge, because again, I know every component of every car, to go back to the analogy we just spoke of. But I want to go ahead and compare. I'll start with Google, right? Let me take a sip of water, and then that's what I wanted. Now, Google, and I have it in a very, very small diagram. So please don't feel that you're going to stay with me long. I'm going to probably talk for 1 minute. So just, right? Okay. So Google has two markets that they benefit, right? There's Google, and then there's Wall Street, and there's Main Street. Now, Wall Street, as defined, is very, very large corporations that have large financial resources, have many different stores and outlets all over the place. But because of their financial resources, they are quite they're quite powerful on platforms that are for profit, right? And then you have Main Street. Main Street is your Main Street businesses, your local businesses, your mom and pops, and their financial resources are constricted to that of their local economy, right? So if the local economy is doing good, more neighbors and community members are going to Main Street. Excuse me, they're buying stuff, therefore that Main Street business had a good year, right? These are the people that simply are just looking to live the American dream, which is to come into the middle class, be a pillar of the community, and raise a family. So those are the two types of businesses in the country, right? That's really it. You could say, well, Ant, there's a not-for-profit. No, businesses, companies looking to make money. Wall Street companies, so very, very large businesses, and Main Street businesses, which are localized. Now, a Wall Street business, a Wall Street company, they go ahead and cover, and again, we're overly simplifying it. The money that they make, the revenue, right? So they sell $100 in goods, they come into $100. That is called revenue. That revenue goes to places. To the overhead, which is salaries and labor and rent and electricity, stuff like that, and shareholders, the investors of the company, right? So when you go ahead and purchase, say, Nike shoes, the money goes to the overhead of Nike and then the shareholders of Nike, okay? When you go to a Main Street business and you purchase $100 in shoes, that money goes to two places as well. And in fact, they overlap at overhead. That money goes to the overhead, right? You have to pay the workers of the business and the rent and the electricity. But where does the other half of the money go to? It goes back into the community, because that business owner is local. He lives in the community. So the more money that that business brings in, which conceivably equals the more money that the business owner has in profit, well, that business owner, being a member of that particular community, spreads the money around. And that's not 100%, right? Like maybe he goes ahead and takes a vacation to Tahiti with his family, in which case Tahiti is a beneficiary of some of that money. But does that business owner do grocery shopping in town? Does that business owner go to the movie theater? Does that business owner go to the restaurant? Does that business owner go see a play? You get the point, right? And does that business owner, because he's a pillar of the community, contribute to charity functions? Does that business owner do fundraising for local, like Girl Scouts and cheerleaders and the boys basketball team? Does that money go there? And the answer is yes. So when you take a look at that, what you can understand is when you give money to a Wall Street company or a very big, large corporation, you cover overhead and you give money to shareholders. Those shareholders grow Wall Street, right? Because if you're a shareholder of a Wall Street company and you collect money via being a shareholder of a Wall Street company, you now have more money to do what? To become a larger shareholder of a Wall Street company. So the growth of shareholders equals the growth of Wall Street companies, right? When you look at Main Street businesses, the growth of the owner, right? When the business makes money, equals the growth of the community. When the community grows, what does that equal? The growth of Main Street. So on a very, very easy to understand, overly simplified comparison, when you buy from a Wall Street company, you grow Wall Street companies. When you buy from a local business, you grow local businesses. And that's the way it works. Okay. So let's take a step back. Well, not even a step back. Let's take a step forward. How do you go ahead and select who you want to go ahead and support? I don't know the answer to that. Well, I know it instinctually, right? Like if I want to support a local business, well, it would behoove me to walk locally, right? Like, let me go walk down Main Street. Let me go ahead and call my neighbor and say, what's the number to that pizza place down the block? Let me go ahead and take a look at the classifieds or the newspaper. I guess like that's how you do it, right? All of which requires labor. It requires movement. It requires a motivation on your behalf that is not scalable, because there are going to be days that you're tired. There are going to be days that you're sick. There are going to be days that you want something at a moment in time that business is not open. There's going to be times of the day where you say, you know what? I just want something super simple. And what do? You go on a search engine, right? Google, Yahoo, MSN, whatever. Bing. So when you go on a search engine, one of those search engines, these search engines are for profit. They're owned by large corporations. Google is owned by Google. Bing is owned by Microsoft. MSN is owned by Comcast. Yahoo, I believe they were purchased by Microsoft, but they were purchased by someone. They're owned by that company, which equals a very rational conversation or very rational economics, right? That business, that search engine is in the business of making money. Now, what is a search engine? When I go to a search engine, I type in my impulse, right? Like shoes or like tennis or like something. And that search engine goes ahead and provides me with relevant results immediately. In which case, I'm able to convert my impulse into action, right? And the journey and the pathway to doing so is the search engine, which makes a search engine really, really a quite profitable business. A money-making thing, a business. So if I want to buy shoes, what is my search? Who is my search worth something to? Well, companies that sell shoes, because companies that sell shoes that live in Idaho or live in wherever, I'm never going to walk past them on Main Street. I'm never going to walk past that store. But they, through buying my searches, are able to go ahead and get in front of me. So what they do is, we're going to use Google for an example, which, by the way, I love Google. And I feel bad because I know we're going to get large enough one day that Google's going to be like, well, you were bad-mouthing our name. You were, whatever the word is. You were, what's the word? I can't even think of it. But you were saying bad things about us, therefore we're going to, we're going to scold you, whatever the case may be. I love Google. I will always use Google. I think Google is the best search engine. It's just about identifying what the search engine's for, right? So anyway, if I'm a shoe company in California, right? And I want to grow my business, I want to acquire new customers, and I want to acquire customers that do not reside locally to me, and I want to acquire customers that use search engines that search for shoes in the privacy of their own home. There's a couple of ways of doing it, but there's one main way of doing it, right? To be at the place where that person decides to search, at the computer. So that shoe company contacts Google through their ads platform and says, okay, I would like to purchase 5,000 clicks, that when someone types in shoes, I want to be a search result in front of them. And when they click my link, that I will go ahead and pay you per that click. And Google says, well, that sounds like a fantastic business, because we don't own these companies and we don't own you. We don't own the search. We don't own anything, but we do own the infrastructure that's able to play matchmaker. We do own the infrastructure that's able to play Cupid. I can go ahead, and because so many people use our search engine, I can identify who those people are through an algorithm, be able to value what their search key terms are, and then adequately I can go ahead and make sure that they're relevant to you. So let's say Anthony from Freehold, New Jersey searches shoes. Well, ABC Shoes in California becomes a result in front of me. And at that moment in time, I never heard of ABC Shoes, but they're the first result. I'm looking at shoes. Every normal and responsible adult, when they search for something, searches for more than one or two, right? Like when you go to a doctor, do you stop at the first one? When you go car shopping, do you stop at the first one? Did you marry the first girl you ever kissed, right? There is a certain sense of, I'm a human being, let me experience what I like and what I don't like, because I don't know what I don't know. So when I go ahead and do that search engine, I see ABC Shoes and I click it. And I'm like, oh, cool, their shoes are kind of cool. They're kind of not, never mind. Let me go ahead and look at the next result. And the next result is XYZ Shoes from Florida, another company I've never heard of. I click it and I'm like, whoa, these shoes are so cool. In fact, I've never seen shoes like these. These are the best shoes in the world. I cannot wait to wear these shoes. I will wear no shoe other than these shoes, right? In which case, I then purchased those shoes. What was the conversion level, right? So take 100 Anthonys, and maybe 10 of those Anthonys will actually buy a shoe from the first click, right? Maybe 10 of those Anthonys will buy shoes from the second click, and so forth and so forth. When you're able to do that calculation, you're able to identify how much each click is worth per shoe company. Google knows that number because they're very good at numbers. So they go ahead and charge each shoe company per click in that amount. Now you would say, well, if they're just charging how much a click is worth, how does that actually help those companies? Well, those companies, once you become a customer of them, they have your email, they have your contact, they know what you do. So they send you emails, they see the shoe you purchased, and they said, oh my God, if you like that shoe, you're gonna love this shoe. And they send it 3 months later because they're thinking your shoe probably got dirty by then. They go in and send you, they're able to track you on your social media and say, wow, that customer, Anthony, also is married to a girl named Tangi, who's from St. Lucia. So what if we sent him the new St. Lucian shoe? I bet you he'll buy that. And the point is, through the algorithmic process, they're able to go ahead and synthesize data further to best get in front of you. Now, even that, I'm not saying there's a problem with. I think that's really cool. I think they're operating a great business. Here's the problem. They're only operating a business that great because they're trying to go ahead and persuade strangers, right? I'm a stranger to that company. They don't know me. They have to do all of this extra work to go ahead and capture me, which is fine. God bless them. But in doing all of that extra work, in every company doing all that extra work, in every company having the ability to go ahead and comb and scour my data and hire the next great engineer and to go ahead and invent more algorithmic processes, who does it leave out? It leaves out Main Street. Main Street is 98% of this country. In fact, the top 10% of this nation owns 70% of the assets. The bottom 50%, so 1 out of every 2 people, share 2% of the assets. The top 1% have 58% of the assets. The top 1%, 1% of people share 58% of the assets, while the bottom 50% share 2%, right? So there's an argument to be made, well, that's economics, that's the way of the market, etc., which I'm not necessarily against. But there's a larger argument to be made. Well, those are real people. Do you agree that because one person is more privileged than the other, and they're put in a situation where they have a certain level of education or resources or whatnot, that their life matters more. That in fact, that one person is equal to 500,000 people being homeless. And the answer is, well, no. But how do you go ahead and solve this? Anthony, I agree with you. I believe that's true. I believe that if listen, I get it, Ant. I want to go ahead and support Main Street businesses too. I just don't know how. And that's the problem. Nobody is saying anti-free market. I believe free market works. I will always say that the invisible hand of the free market is the most liberating, free, guaranteed freedom in the history of the world. The people that don't believe that, at least in my opinion, are blind, or at least, I guess blind, or a less harsh word than blind, but they do not notice that there's variables missing. What do I mean by that? So everything we just spoke of was using a search engine. Everything that we just shared was through the genesis of using a search engine. Well, let's go back to the genesis. What's the search engine? The search engine's for profit. So if the search engine's for profit, how do they make their money? Well, they sell search results to companies large enough to pay them, which means by default, at the moment of genesis, at the moment that you go ahead and press anything, you are responsible for destroying Main Street and propping up Wall Street. Is that something you knowingly do? Is that something you purposely do? Is that something that you set out to do? And if the answer is no, well, then you're the problem, but you're not. You're unknowingly the problem. You know why? Because it's a monopoly. The search engine market is monopolized. They do not have an option that goes ahead and prioritizes Main Street. You know why? Because search engines cost money. You cannot run a search engine as a for-profit unless you go ahead and make it a government subsidy. And do you want the government owning search engines? I think that's probably the worst idea ever. In fact, you could actually make an argument that they do own it because they allow monopolies to exist when they could so easily crush them. So you have to ask yourself, is the government stupid? Do they not know Google's a monopoly? Or are they allowing it because they're getting something in return? And then you would say, well, it's no coincidence that media and search engines kind of align with the same political views, right? So when you take a step back, you can see a really, really, really big, on the worst sense, corrupt system, but in the best case scenario, a singularly focused, a singularly motivated and focused industry, right? Like, so let's be fair. So how do you solve that, right? Because we're not saying search engines are bad. We're not saying people's choice is bad. We're not saying that the business models are bad. We're simply saying that there is no alternative. And without an alternative, it's just a monopoly. For instance, what's the price of carrots today? I don't know it, but I can promise you that if carrots were the only food in existence, the price would be much higher. And it would have nothing to do with the taste of carrot. It would have to do with that there's no availability of broccoli, right? There's no such thing as parsnips. There's no such thing as celery, which, by the way, is a 0-calorie food. So if you're weight conscious, you burn the calories of celery just by chewing it. So there's a little insight into chubby Anthony when he was younger, right? So what is Rhino Street? Well, we understand Google, right? You could either, there's two businesses, there's Wall Street and Main Street. And by purchasing from a Wall Street company, you grow Wall Street. And by purchasing from a Main Street business, you grow Main Street. But the determination of which business or company that you get shown as listings comes down to which one's able to pay Google because they're for profit. And because it comes down to that, which company do you think has the money to do it? Main Street businesses that are completely dependent on local economy, or Wall Street companies which are completely dependent on shareholder investment resources, right? So we can right off the bat say, well, take a look at Google. They are operating a monopoly and it's really, really unfair to Main Street. Okay, so how do you solve that? Well, that's what Rhino Street attempts to do, right? Rhino Street goes ahead and has the same equation. You have Wall Street companies and Main Street businesses. except Rhino Street X's out Wall Street companies. But there is no Wall Street company that is allowed to be a search result on Rhino Street. They are disqualified. And that's not me talking tough, right? It's not like when a president comes out and says, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and cancel all college debt, and then you vote for them, and then you still have college debt, because you realize for them to do that, they would have to lose the vote of the banks, and they didn't really want to do that. They just told a bunch of people what they wanted to hear. No, because we own the search engine, we invented the search engine, we populate it with the results that we see fit. So off the bat, Wall Street companies are not allowed to be a result. Now you might say, well, Ant, how do you do that? Because Google, they're able to look up keywords across the whole internet. Well, the way Google's made is they don't actually have opt-ins. They have algorithm that scours the entire internet, which means they can't necessarily, or at least effectively, distinguish between local businesses and Wall Street companies, because that's not a filter. They're just blanketing the whole internet. Rhino Street is opposite. We're not blanketing anything. The search results are kind of like, if you could think of like a big Excel sheet, right? They're all opt-ins. And the search results, after our algorithms and our calculations, blah, 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 your search results only equal from that Excel sheet, which means if it's not on the Excel sheet, it can never be a listing. It can never be a result for you. So that's an overly simplified, right? Like I'm trying to do better by simplifying things. So the essence of that was to teach you, or to allow you to have a certain level of confidence that we're not just saying it. Now, Wall Street companies are not allowed on. Therefore, the only listings you will ever get are Main Street businesses, right? Okay, so let's talk about Main Street businesses. They have two things, right? An overhead and the owner of the business who lives in the community. So they have the overhead and the community. So when the money goes to a Main Street business, it goes to the overhead, which, by the way, are people that live in the community. Like, let's not forget that part, right? The overhead of a Main Street business is the labor, is the workers, is the employees that are likely from the community, right? You see, when you buy from Nike, who's the overhead? Is it workers that are getting paid $2 an hour in China? Is it workers that are getting paid $2.50 in India? Because it's never going to be the college graduate or the high school senior or the middle school 7th grader that is spending a couple of hours in between studies. That's your neighbor's daughter, right? Like, that's not a thing. So not only is there overhead, it's overhead, but it's not community overhead. So Main Street businesses, their overhead is given back to the community. So when little Susie goes ahead and puts in 5 hours over the course of a week because she's only in 8th grade and she wants to pitch in a little bit by helping, be the register clerk to sell the shoes, that money then goes into what? Her savings fund, her ice cream fund, her go to the mall and buy some cookies fund, right? And where does that money go? It stays in the community. But more importantly, the business owner lives in the community, so any profit of the business goes into the community. So not only does the overhead go into the community, the profit goes into the community. So Rhino Street, by definition, is the only search engine that goes ahead and supports community, goes ahead and supports Main Street. And what we believed was that was still not a sexy enough message, right? Because despite everyone's most noble intentions, it's kind of like your favorite word is your name, whether you're willing to admit it or not. Your favorite community is also your community. So if I were a user in a Main Street search engine and my search results were local businesses across the entire US, I would be less inclined to use it. And it's not because I don't agree with community, but all of the leniencies, all the luxuries I would give a particular local, now, because local businesses are not, for the most part, as efficient as Wall Street companies, right? Wall Street company has bazillions of dollars, bazillions of the best and brightest, blah, 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 because they outsource from China and India, blah, blah, blah. They're able to conceivably offer you the best product, the best generalized product, because they have to reach a mass market at the lowest price. So say, for instance, you're buying the same exact thing, right? A shirt that says ABC from a Wall Street company and a shirt that says ABC from a Main Street business. That Main Street business is likely going to charge you an extra $1 or $2, right? Because they have an overhead that does not allow them to outsource labor to China and India and all the rest, right? And they don't have a scale as large as that. So their wholesale costs are higher. Therefore, their retail cost to you, the consumer, is higher. So if I can buy this wonderful shirt that says ABC from Amazon for $7, but it would cost me $9 from this Main Street business search engine, what do I do? Now, Anthony would like to say, well, golly gee, I'm buying it from the Main Street business search engine, right? Because I support Main Street. But I suspect at 2 a.m. in the privacy of Anthony's home, it might be a more difficult decision because I don't know the person I'm buying. I understand it's a Main Street business, but do I emotionally care? Do I viscerally care that I'm helping a Main Street in Seattle, Washington, when I live in Freehold, New Jersey? On the surface, sure, all things being equal, I'm happy to help them, but they're not equal. It's going to cost me additional money to help them versus just getting something, which makes no difference to me because I don't get to look, touch, taste, feel that business. So to go ahead and further expand on the value proposition to make sure Rhino Street's successful, the search results that are shown to you are calculated to equal a 20-mile radius from the user location. So during the course of us building Rhino Streets, it was one of the most common criticisms. Anthony, 20-mile radius, good, because I want to sell to everyone in the world and 20-mile radius takes it away from me. In which case our retort was, through our experience, right, going back to the lineage that made us who we are today, we've learned in business, it's not about being good at many things, it's about being great at one thing. Because if you truly believe that off the bat, you're just going to get away with being good at a bunch of stuff, or you're right off the bat, you just expect to be great at everything, then you're naive and you're going to fail. Because that's not the case. You need to find one thing you're great at. In fact, if you were to invite me to dinner and said, Ant, there's 2 restaurants. One, it's the most amazing global food place, right? They have dishes from Italy, they have dishes from Spain, they have the best sushi from Japan, they have lo mein from China, they have curry from India, and it's all made by the same kitchen. I can't believe how amazing they are. And then the second one is this little mom and pop Italian restaurant that's been there for 200 years. Where do you want to go? 100 out of 100 times, I'm going to take the little mom and pop Italian spot. And it's not because one's a small business and one's a big. No, you didn't tell me that. All I know is that they focus on one thing. So I gotta believe that over 200 years that they figured out how to make chicken parm, right? I gotta believe that they figured out how to make a good sauce. I firmly have confidence in that little mom and pop Italian place is going to offer me in their expectations, in their experience, according to their standards, the best dish that they're physically able to make. That restaurant that has all the dishes from all the different places sounds cool, but do I have any expectation that they make the best curry? No, I don't, because they're making curry next to the guy that's making sauce, next to the guy that's rolling rice for sushi. It's just, I don't have that confidence, right? Same thing with Rhino Street. We need to be great at one thing. So when you put it together, when your search results are only a 20-mile radius, let's do the same calculation. Do you go ahead and buy that $7 shirt from Amazon or that $9 shirt from your 20-mile radius? Now define 20-mile radius. Who lives in a 20-mile radius? Your neighbors, your teachers, your children's friends, your school, your job, your everything lives in a 20-mile. So when you go ahead and purchase from that business, well, Rhino Street isn't like Google. It doesn't go ahead and just show you like the name. It says So another cool thing, right? So Google will say the name of the business, ABC's closed, right? Rhino Street says ABC's closed by Don Sturgill, right? ABC's closed by Doug McCroskey. ABC closed by Frida Hug, right? So immediately when you look at that search, you know the business owner. You know the business owner, which means you can probably text the business owner. You could call them, you could email them, you know them. You could purchase a thing and know that Don went ahead and saw that Anthony purchased his shirt. The next time you see Don at the soccer field or the next time you bump into him at the grocery store, you know what Don's going to say? Hey, how did you like that shirt? Thank you so much. We're doing so good in this community that we were able to send little Don over to Harvard, right? We were able to send little Don to that private school, not the public school, right? And that's not to say public schools are not good, but I think any fair-minded adult would say the education, maybe not the social exposure, right? Like if you want to, and which actually we're going to argue right now, but the education is likely better. And one would say, well, I send my kids to public school because I want them to meet people of all kinds. Well, that sentence goes ahead and assumes that people of only one kind have money, which goes ahead back to the whole problem that the 1% have all of the money. Therefore, if you're equally investing in the entire community, that's not the case no more. People of color, people of no color, people of gender, people of different genders, people of like switching genders, they're all equal because they're all being invested in equally, which means everything going forward already has a social progressive nature embedded in it because there is no one demographic that goes ahead and gets privilege over anyone else because economically it's the main street, it's the locality that gets the benefit, not the person or demographic in the locality. So that's what Rhino Street does. So not only does it disqualify all Wall Street companies, but it goes ahead and it goes ahead and filters all results to only a 20-mile radius while also adding the name of the business owner. Because another thing that most people that they discount is that if I'm, like for instance, if I'm on, like back in the day when I was single, right? If I was on a dating app and I knew all the people that I'm searching, right? So like you're on a dating app and Kimberly is like, hey, Ann, nice to meet you. Can't wait to go out for like drinks or something one day. What does Kimberly know about me? Well, anything that I wrote. Well, since Kimberly doesn't know that 2 years ago, I got into a horrible car crash and I'm missing a leg, I didn't really need to write that I'm missing a leg. In fact, I got a nice prosthetic. By the way, I'm making this up, right? But I have a nice prosthetic leg. And by the time she realizes it, it's because we're already in bed together, right? Like when else is she going to see me without my leg on, right? The point being, there's a certain level of, I could exude who I want you to think I am when you don't know the person. Now, let's say that dating app was a 20-mile radius. The only people that would ever see me are the people that I grew up with. They would know that I have a prosthetic leg. But secondly, if I went ahead and did not share that I had a prosthetic leg and pretended I didn't, they would find out quite quickly and they would be so offended. But not only would they be offended, they would share with their friends and family. Who are their friends and family? Your community. Meaning that when you're held to the standard that the only people that will ever search you live within a 20-mile radius, that live within your community, there is no tolerance for scamming or misinforming or taking advantage of. Because not only do you lose a customer, you lose the community because the community goes to each other's soccer games. They shop at the grocery store. They go to the same places. They go to schools together. Therefore, the standard of the product, standard of the service is always going to be to the highest extent, right? So, hey, Deborah, so Rhino Street disqualifying Wall Street companies filtering based on 20-mile radius of Main Street businesses and providing the name of the person who owns it within the search is already leagues and leagues and leagues ahead of anything that's available today. So for the first time, it gives you the option. Hey, do you go ahead? Oh, no, it's okay, Deborah. As everyone knows, we go ahead and record these and we share it with everyone. So when someone asks you, well, Anthony, all things being equal, right? Your next purchase, would you prefer it to be from a Wall Street company or a Main Street business? I actually not only can say Main Street business, which we all say to begin with, but I have a way to express that. I have a way to represent that behavior. I have a way to take action on it. For the first time ever, that's what this is. Now, I want to get into the economics of it. Remember when I said I was going to describe it by 10:30? It's now 10:56. So let me describe the economics of it, right? So Google is funded by money. Money grows Google. Well, actually, let me scale that back a little bit. Google was funded by money, and Google, once it launched, is continued funded by money, right? That's how their customers are acquired, because their customers pay them money. Google is a for-profit enterprise. Nothing wrong with that, right? It's just, that is what it is. There's nothing wrong with a blonde girl, but maybe you like a brunette. There's nothing wrong with a redhead girl, but maybe you like a blonde, right? There's nothing wrong with Google. It's just who they are. Rhino Street is funded by money, right? Like, we're growing Rhino Street. It takes money to do everything that we're talking about. But once launched, Rhino Street is a non-profit business. There is no way to buy anything on Rhino Street. There is zero chance that, I'm gonna just use Don because I love Don, right? There's zero chance that Don could say to Anthony, hey, Ant, I want to have my listing as #1 search result on every company across every search engine for every user across the whole globe. I want to give you $1 million for that. I would say, well, Don, I absolutely adore you, and I have to respectfully decline, because there is no way anyone could buy anything on Rhino Street. It's a nonprofit. Which then begs the question, Anthony, I was told ever since a little boy, my mother, who, happy Mother's Day, everyone, if something sounds too good to be true, it is. If something is pitched to you as free, you're the sale. Which I agree with, both of it. So it is important to go ahead and tell you how the money works. Which is funny, because anytime I've ever bought anything in my life, and this is an aside, whenever I bought anything from a salesperson, I always said the same thing. How are you making your money? And they would always get a little, how dare you ask that question? I would say to them, I believe you have the right to earn money. I want to make sure you earn money, but I want to know how you're making money, because that's important to my decision, right? If I'm buying a car and you're making 40% commission on it at this price, I'm not buying a car at that price. But if you're making 0% commission on it, well, then boost it up a little bit. Like, you deserve to make money, right? So you have to know where the money's coming from. Otherwise, you leave yourself vulnerable to being taken advantage of. Okay, so I want to go ahead and compare this for a second to air rights. Now, for those that are unfamiliar with the term air rights is a term for urban areas, right? Like business districts. Like, say, for instance, in New York City, you have the largest building and you're renting out the apartments for rent or for purchase. Now, in the price that you're renting it out for is all the amenities included. One of the amenities might be you're on the top floor and you have the best view of Central Park, which in New York City is worth a lot of money. It's worth actually probably around $20,000 a month. Well, now, the only way you can guarantee that you're going to have the best view of Central Park is if another building right next to you doesn't go ahead and build as tall as yours, or taller, or even a little bit shorter, because now your view to Central Park is obstructed. Now your view has gone from, you get out of bed, you yawn naked in front of your windows, and instead of seeing Central Park and seeing little people that are the size of ants walking around, you have someone in a building next to you, which is the only thing you see is a building, looking back at you, and you're like, oh my God, right? That apartment went from being worth $20,000 a month to being worth maybe $2,000 a month. Now, as the building owner, do I want my apartments to bring in $20,000 a month, or do I want them to bring in $2,000 a month? It's a very simple, obvious answer, which means it would behoove me to purchase the air rights of the building next to me. So what's air rights? Air rights is the air, right, above a certain point, right? So if I say the building next to me, I want to purchase all your air rights over 20 stories. Well, now that building, by facilitating that transaction, is not allowed to build higher than 20 stories. If they want to, they have to buy the air rights back from me, which means air rights is a monetizable asset that nobody even knew existed. Who ever believed that they owned the air above their building? But that air is worth something to someone. Therefore, it is an asset. An asset is defined as something that is of value to someone. That person owns their air because they could build into that air. Therefore, that transaction was consummated and air rights were sold. This building, who never dreamt of building higher than 20 stories, just came into a lot of money for something they didn't even know was an asset. That's how Rhino Street grows. Air rights. Now, of course, Rhino Street's not a building. So once you understand the concept of air rights, what is the air rights of Rhino Street? Transactions. If you go to the store and buy a stick of bubble gum, right? Well, not a stick, right? Like a pack. You give the cashier $1. He gives you the pack of bubble gum. At that moment in time, you made a transaction. You had $1. Now he has it. He had bubble gum. Now you have it. You both walk away quite happy. You blow a big bubble. It gets on your face and you're like, haha, I feel like a kid again. Super cool. But what is the air rights of that transaction? It is the transaction. So imagine for a second, every time anyone ever bought bubble gum, that invisibly in the background, the money when you gave to the cashier was used to buy bubblegum coin and then subsequently sell bubblegum coin, and which means the cashier had $1, now had $1 of bubblegum coin, now had $1 cash again. Does it matter to him at all? No, because he has his dollar. Does it matter to you at all? No, because you have your gum. But does it matter to bubblegum coin? Yes. You know why? Because bubblegum coin is now the size of the bubblegum market, right? Because every stick of bubblegum has to use bubblegum coin. Therefore, bubblegum coin is worth the size of the bubblegum market because you can't buy bubblegum without using bubblegum coin. Now, how does bubblegum, say that 5 times fast, right? How does bubblegum coin gain value? Well, the bubblegum market has to grow. Kind of see where I'm going with this? And not only does it have to grow, but you have to actually go ahead and capture the market, right? You're not going to be able to get every bubblegum transaction day one. You're going to get like 10, and then you're going to grow and grow and grow to more bubblegum transactions, more stores. And why is that? Because everyone that adopts bubblegum coin is making money on air rights. Their store ABC doesn't know what bubblegum coin is. You go in there and say, hey, do you know what bubblegum coin is? You just, you make money because the bubblegum coin buys and sells all the bubblegum you sell. And the store owner goes, so what does it do for me? Like, what do I have to do? Nothing. You keep everything as is, but you're also given a share of this bubblegum coin because nobody's making millions off you. They're going ahead and monetizing an asset that you didn't know you have, and they're giving that asset to you. Because not only by giving that asset to you is it to benefit you, but it's also bringing you into a community of others that are doing the same thing. Now, what is that community of others doing the same thing? Well, now we go back to Rhino Street, right? So we then ask ourselves, what is Rhino Street? It only grows Main Street. Okay. Well, ants. So if you grow Main Street and you have like Main Street coin, well, then Main Street coin goes up in value, right? Okay. I still don't get how it works, right? So this is the coolest part about the whole thing. So of the times that I've shared how this works with people, they've always kind of said, well, Ant, I get what you're doing, but it's brand new. Like, how are you going to get ahead and grow all these sales on Rhino Street? So let me walk you through it, right? Excuse me. So Rhino Street is a search engine, right? Rhino Street is a Main Street search engine, right? Rhino Street is a Main Street search engine that disqualifies Wall Street companies and filters within a 20-mile radius of the user. Okay. So does it behoove Main Street companies to be on Rhino Street? Of course, because anybody that searches is going to find them. Anyone that searches locally is going to find them, which means every user that finds them is within a 20-mile radius to them. And also every user that finds them is not getting 1,000 results of competing companies, right? Like when you go ahead and search pizza on Google, you get all different pizza places. If you search pizza on Rhino Street, you only get the 2 or 3 pizza places in town, right? So it behooves every Main Street business to be on Rhino Street, right? Like it just makes sense. Okay, so now when a Main Street business comes on Rhino Street, well, first, how do we do it? Well, it's a very simple proposition, right? When we reach out to someone, hey, Mr. Jones, we'd like to invite you on to Rhino Street. This is what it does. If you'd like, opt in here. Now, of course, that's overly simplified, but we believe the result is going to be, yeah, of course. Like, I'm not paying you anything. You're asking to send me traffic. You're asking to show me as a search result. Sure, done, right? Okay. In doing so, we also go ahead and explain what the Rhino coin is, right? So the Main Street then says, okay, so there's this bubblegum coin, right? We're coining it as that, coining it as that, right? And it's just going to give me money, and it's going to bring our Main Street closer in proximity. It's going to motivate those to use this more, right? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm in. Here's the cool part. Now, the app that's being launched, well, it's going to be completed by the end of this week. Launched is a different thing because it matters how long does it take to get through iOS, the Apple Store, and the Android Store, which we suspect will be quite easy, right? Like we did all the work. So let's just say the mobile app will be launched in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? The mobile app allows you to manage your own business, right? On the mobile app, you have a function to manage your own business because it pulls the API, which is computer talk, for your listing on Rhino Street. Because Rhino Street and Rhino Street's mobile app are obviously connected. So when you're listed on Rhino Street, you have your business on your app. And conversely, if you are not listed on Rhino Street, you can list your business through your mobile app, which means the friction to list a business on Rhino Street is quite easy. Like you just boom. Because all you're doing is giving us permission to list your business. You don't have to make a new site. You're just giving us permission. Okay. Now, Rhino Coin, which I do quotations because Rhino Coin is not the name of it. It's the alias. We just don't want, we want to go ahead and protect the reputation of it, right? Like, for instance, if I told you the real name of the coin, well, how many people would go out, and not you, but how many other people would go out and try to knock it off a little bit, right? We've already seen people try to knock off Rhino Coin, and we're just not going to risk anyone's wealth with that, right? So in a month from now, well, before our launch, we're launching June 25th. After we go ahead and complete the mobile app, the next step for our developer department is to then go ahead and create the coin and create the coin payment system. That will all be on the app as well. So now on the app, you have your business, pull the API through our search engine, and you have your wallet completely coded for Rhino Street. Are you seeing it yet? You have your business here, and you have your wallet here on the same app, which means the Rhino Street, the Rhino coin then effectively works. Because again, with bubblegum, the wallet is the dollar you have. The business is the bubblegum. Being in proximity allows the transaction. These both are going to be right on your app, which means anytime anyone does any transactions with their Main Street business, the coin automatically gets purchased and automatically gets. Now, you do not need to sell the whole 100% of the coin. You can, right? Like you could do it as an automatic function. But there will be a point in time where people say, well, I want to own some coin because it keeps going up, right? And I'll explain how that works. So when people say to me, well, Anthony, I get it. So all of the transactions done via Rhino Street, right? Someone goes onto Rhino Street, they find a business, they purchase something, the coin gets transacted. Cool. That sounds great, but you're a completely new search engine. How are you going to get all those transactions happening on your search engine like right away? You're forecasting that you're going to have thousands and millions of dollars of transactions right away. How does that happen? Here's the part that most people miss when they make that statement. It's the part that most people say, wait a second, Anthony did think of that. Businesses do not segregate where somebody was before they purchased, right? Let me clean that up. So businesses know if you came into the store and bought something. Businesses know if you came online and bought something. But businesses don't know, unless you're like a super duper duper, like following all the analytics, which Main Street businesses aren't. Not to say they can't be, but by generally they're not. Businesses don't know that you first started at Yahoo and then you went to Google and then you went to your friend's Facebook and you saw a link and then you came to their shop and you purchased something. Now there is affiliate marketing that does track that, but you need special software and you need to give everyone their own link. And so before anyone says, well, Ant, you must understand that every business does not wake up and say, we need to go ahead and track every transaction that ever comes through. We need to give everyone affiliate codes and we need to get the best analytic department to do Google AdWords and to go ahead and, no, it's not the way it works. Regular businesses are like, okay, cool, we made a transaction, awesome. Which means that the transactions done by the business are all brought to Rhino Street, right? It's not that, hey, Anthony went on Rhino Street and purchased a shoe from Don. Now there's one transaction. It's Anthony went on Rhino Street and bought a shoe from Don, which is one of Don's transactions in his shoe shop. And all of those transactions are operating within the coin, which means every business that gets brought on, Rhino Street absorbs all of their revenue, which means every business that comes on is worth exponential growth to the value of the coin. Now, when you played out, you might say, well, Ant, Don might say, well, that's a little bit much for me, right? Like it's not okay that you just, like I'm not saying I'm against it, but I just don't know if I'm for this coin operating within all my transactions, right? Like I get it, but it just feels different to me. Okay, great, go check it out. And we could disconnect whatever you want. Again, Rhino is never going to interfere in your life, or we're not going to ever force your life. You tell us something and there's options to back out of stuff, right? But what Don's going to see very quickly is, wait a second. The coin was like 7 cents yesterday. It's 40 cents today. How did that happen? Well, Don, every business that comes on, we absorb all of their sales, which means every business that comes on is another $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 worth of buying of a coin in a given day, which means that's that much more volume for the coin, which means Rhino coin is the only pure cut, unadulterated asset to go ahead and measure Main Street business. In fact, Rhino coin is the only asset in the entire world that completely 100% captures the value of the USA small business market. And at that moment, Don might say, oh, I see what you're doing here. This isn't just like Don's the fool and he allowed this. No, this is Don's part of a much larger movement that is all allowing their sales to come onto Rhino Street because everyone owns the coin, which means this is the moment in time that small business and Main Street through the technology and the structure that Rhino Street is offering, for the first time in history, has the ability to take back what is theirs through air rights. Because the number of transactions in this country are 99% small business, but the assets in this country are only 44% small business, because the large corporations have like the much higher ticket things per se, and they just have other stuff. The point being, when you have, so get this, right? 44% of this nation is 44% of the business assets in this nation are small business, but 99% of the businesses are small business, right? So if you have 99% of the businesses small business, but they only have 44% of the assets, like the income of it, that's what, 55% of money? That's just proportionally theirs, but they don't have. So if you were able to go ahead and value the transactions in an asset that's actually owned by all the people that do the transactions, for the first time in history, you have that ability. And as it pertains to Rhino Street, there's only 1 billion supply of coin. So for those that say, well, Ant, that's a lot of coin, 1 billion. Well, it never goes higher than 1 billion. There's only 1 billion. And when you take a look at, say, the small business market, it's 12 trillion, which is 1,200 times the supply of the coin. Now, okay, Ant, so maybe the coin goes to $1,200. Well, A, that's a home run. It's only 6 cents right now. But secondly, is that all that could go to? Because we're saying that Rhino Street grows small business, right? Like we did not get into small business to say, okay, we just want to stop it going down, but we don't want to grow bigger. No, we're going to grow that larger. And is that all that we are? Well, Ann, I remember you saying 10 out of 10 people would probably pick to support a Main Street business over a Wall Street company. Wouldn't they be someone that wants to own the coin so that they can either participate in that market, or they can contribute to that market, or do both? Yeah. Wait a second. So that's like 330 million people in the nation. Yeah. Well, let's say 330 million people all are in for $1,000, right? Like $1,000. What's that number come out to? Well, that comes out to 330 billion. That's a big number. So 330 billion people. So 330 million people want to own 1,000 each, which is 330 billion, which is 330 times the supply. And there's 11 trillion in a market that we're actually, by definition, going to be able to grow, because for the first time ever, we're offering an option that never existed before, and an option that people are going to want to use that actually connects them with everyone, while creating an app that has social media engagement, not like Facebook or Instagram, but has chat functions, follow functions, scrolling businesses, the photos, has an all function that allows you to see all the businesses that are local in your community, as posted by the picture of the person and their name. To get back to the Google question at the beginning of this, to get back to the Facebook question at the beginning of this is not going to be for everyone. But in 20 years from now, somebody will actually be able to say to you, imagine if Rhino Street came to you and described everything that they're doing and actually had it all built. And they were just doing that last round of funding. And that funding was for war chest, so that they could bring in the resources and actually market it properly so that they could get the best launch possible. And they were willing to give you equity of that company and give you coin of that company before it launched. Imagine if they did that to you, how different life would be. And you're either going to be one of two people. You're going to say, well, actually, they did offer it to me. And it's been amazing. I saw what was going on. I actually saw this guy, Anthony, every day for like 6 years, which is how long we've been doing all this stuff. And I just knew. And I did. And I never have to work a day in my life. Which is, yeah, that actually did happen. And, money was tight and this, and I just couldn't do it. But what I would do to go back and get that done, like I had that chance, and I don't have it anymore. So that's our presentation. Now I want to share with you a couple of things. Rhino Coin we're going to cease offering it at the end of this week. We are not allowing the purchase of Rhino coin any further. And the reason being, because now we're shifting, and again, so full disclosure, we just came up with that this week, right? So it's not something that you were unaware of, like I'm making you aware of it right now. Because in 2 weeks, we're going to start populating the search results. We're going to probably have 7,000 businesses before we ever even launch, which is a much higher number than projected in our balance sheet because of something that we're doing. We're actively going to start reaching out to businesses one by one, but in a larger fashion, right? And as you can tell by this presentation, the businesses need to own some of the coin, right? I cannot have businesses come on and me be like, oh yeah, and then we're just not going to give you any coin because everyone else already bought it. Because then the businesses say, wait a second, so we're going to come onto this platform. Yeah, I get it. We're going to grow Main Street and blah, 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 but everyone else is going to make money off of us. Not interested, right? So I have to make sure that we're able to properly incentivize them to be a participant, right? This is week 25. For 25 weeks, we have offered coin to everyone from 1 cent to 2 cent to 3 cent to 4 cent to 5 cent to 6 cent. So I really, really feel quite comfortable that we went over and above to make sure that that was accessible. Okay, so I need to be able to keep the coin to go ahead and be able to incentivize the businesses. Secondly, but because I feel like I'm kind of taking something from someone, I want to be able to go ahead and not equally, but extra compensate. So those that know Rhino know that we've only had 2 rounds of equity financing. The original 10 that got on in 2017, 2018, and the additional 45 that got in 2020. Those that own Rhino Equity, which is Rhino Research LLC, which owns Rhino Streets, own not only everything we've ever done, not only everything that we do, but everything we ever do going forward. Now, I can't tell you what we're going to invent 10 years from now, but I can promise you that I will be this person every single day. And by 10 years from now, I can only imagine what we're doing, right? So Rhino Equity is that. On top of that, Rhino Equity gets 1% monthly dividends. Now, what does that mean? So say, for instance, you put $100,000 into Rhino Equity. So you own a piece of Rhino. Every single month, you get a check for $1,000, 1%. Now, that doesn't come from your principal. That's a return on your principal. So your 100,000 is always safe. Like your 100,000 is there, but you receive $1,000 every month as a dividend, or you're able to automatically reinvest it, which means it's compounded, right? So 100,000 equals 101,000, which equals $101,100 equals 100,000, $102,220, right? Like and so forth, because it continues compounds on each other. On top of that, Rhino Research LLC owns 50 million coin of the billion. And we keep that so that we can go ahead and distribute that to all of our investors, right? The people that own Rhino should be complete participants and equal participants and actually rewarded as participants for being an equity owner so that they also own the coin as well. So your percentage, now Rhino is valued at 4.5 million, right? So it's a very, very conservative, like friends and family type thing. Like you guys know me by now, right? So, and the last round was 4.5 million. So it's consistent. The 45 people that got on all did at 4.5 million. And one could say, Ant, from 2020 to now, you kind of come a long way. So just in that sense, it's a very attractive valuation. Okay. That being said, on that 4.5 million, whatever dollar amount that you come up with, you own that percentage of Rhino. So if you come up with 45,000, you own 1% of Rhino because 45,000 is 1% of 4.5 million, right? Like that's how the numbers work, which means you own 1% of the 50 million coin, which means you have 1% monthly dividends on your 45,000, which equals, I think, $450, right? I'm saying all of that now, not to go ahead and offer you anything other than what I'm going to offer you. So I'm posting a link in our chats right now. Many of you already have a call scheduled with me. Those that don't have a call scheduled with me, please click this and schedule a call. Once I receive that you scheduled a call for me, first of all, this is only this week. So by next week, this is done. For those that go ahead and schedule a call with me, I'm going to then email you our terms offer, in which case you're going to have next steps to either wait till our call and then further explore it, or you can go ahead and email me back and say, Ant, I've identified this this amount that I would like to move forward with. When can we get on a call as soon as possible? Because I know what I want to do and I want to do it while it's still available. Because we are raising $300,000 for this launch. We're willing to accept up to 500, no more than 500, because again, it's not free. We have to give equity, and we know what our equity is worth, so we don't want to give too much of it, right? So once we hit 300 or the end of the week happens, it's over. So some people will say, hey, listen, I get it, just get me in now. This is what I want to do. But if you want to go ahead and stay with the call, that's fine too. Like, we're going to make sure that you're taken care of. But half this, well, about a third of this room already is equity holders. So just by definition of them still being here, one could understand that like we're here, we're not going anywhere. So that was the presentation for today. Oh, that's so funny. You can see the picture on this computer. It's YouTube. But it is a picture of a girl's face. No, it's a YouTube. I listen to some of the music during the day when I'm working. So I guess we can lower this. What an awful, not awful, but I wish I had it like this for our call. But anyway, so I'm going to leave it there because I have my team meeting at 12 to 2. And then I have 10 calls scheduled today between 2 and 7:30. So a lot of stuff is happening. So if you would like to take advantage of the last opportunity to ever be a Rhino Equity holder, this is that. Because once we go ahead and bring in the resources to go ahead and facilitate our launch to the biggest degree that we dreamt of, Rhino's, it's done. It's launched. Money's never going to be a concern again. Remember, Rhino owns 50 million coin. I personally, I think I own 46% of Rhino at this point. Anyone that knows me knows that money doesn't go to my bank account, goes reinvesting into Rhino. So 46% of 50 million comes out to what? 21, 22 million coin. That much coin at say $2, $3 allows me to fund Rhino for like kingdom come. So that's that. Thanks, Anthony. See you. Yeah, Frida, I have a call with you tomorrow. All right, so let's leave it there. I absolutely love everyone. I'm going to repost this into our Rhino Wealth group, along with the link to schedule the call. Wednesday, we're going to do a much bigger presentation on Rhino Street, the 2 o'clock that we do, in which case I'm going to offer everyone the link to purchase coin as well. Actually, you know what? Let me just do that now. I might as well. So if you're not interested in being a equity holder, but you are interested in owning a little more coin because you're like, can't, I mean, that seems pretty obvious. Here's the link. So this is just for the coin. This is not for the equity. This is just for the coin. And some people feel more comfortable doing this because they're looking for like $100 or $1,000 or like $2,000. For those that are looking to take a sizable stake in this company, that's for equity holders. So I love everyone. For those that I have a call with later today, I will speak to you later. For those I don't have a call with, please schedule a call. I see Miss Mafia in the house. Go ahead and schedule a call because I did want to speak to you. By the way, I haven't had any of your emails in so long, and I've always enjoyed reading the novels. So let's get going. Everyone else, I love you, and I will see you Wednesday. And for those I'm going to speak to later, I'll see you later, right? Bye, guys.